The signal caught everyone at Mission Control off guard. Dr. Elena Martinez had been monitoring deep space transmissions for 15 years, but she'd never seen anything like this. The pattern was too precise, too structured to be natural phenomena. Her hands trembled as she cross-referenced the data against known astronomical events. "Director Chen," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You need to see this." Director James Chen crossed the control room in long strides, his usual calm demeanor showing cracks of curiosity. He leaned over Elena's station, eyes scanning the readouts. The signal pulsed with mathematical precision, a clear binary sequence repeating every 47 seconds. "Location?" he asked, already reaching for the secure phone. "Edge of the Kuiper Belt," Elena replied, bringing up the trajectory analysis. "Whatever it is, it's not moving like any object we've ever tracked. It's waiting." Within hours, every major space agency and observatory on Earth had confirmed the signal. The news spread like wildfire through the scientific community, but the public remained unaware. World leaders gathered in emergency sessions, military forces went on high alert, and humanity faced its first real evidence that they weren't alone in the universe. The signal continued for 3 days, unchanging in its rhythm. Then, without warning, it stopped. In its place came a new transmission, this one carrying clear visual data. The images resolved into shapes that defied human understanding, crystalline structures that seemed to flow like liquid, geometric patterns that hurt the eyes to look at directly. And then came the words, transmitted in perfect English. "We are the consortium. We have been watching. We need to talk." The first meeting took place on neutral ground, the International Space Station. Humanity scrambled to prepare, retrofitting the station with new modules for the visitors. Director Chen led the Earth delegation, chosen for his diplomatic experience and unflappable nature. Elena insisted on being part of the team. After all, she'd been the first to hear their call. The consortium representatives arrived in a ship that seemed to bend light around itself, a feat that had Earth's physicists salivating. 3 beings emerged, each more alien than the last. The lead delegate, who called itself Nexus, resembled a shifting cloud of iridescent particles contained within a roughly humanoid force field. "Your species intrigues us," Nexus stated, its words translated by an unseen mechanism. "You are young, yet you've survived challenges that have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours." "We're resilient," Chen replied carefully, "and we're eager to learn." "Learn?" Nexus's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "Yes, you are. But that's not why we're here. We've been monitoring your conflicts, your wars, the way you adapt, the way you overcome seemingly impossible odds. It's unique." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. They hadn't come to welcome humanity to some grand galactic community. They'd come because they needed something specific, humanity's expertise in warfare. "There's a threat," Nexus continued, confirming Elena's fears, "one that conventional military might cannot defeat. We need warriors who think differently. We need humans. We're not just warriors," Chen objected, but Nexus cut him off with a gesture. "No, you're survivors. And that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. We offer you access to technology centuries beyond your current capabilities, knowledge of the universe you've barely begun to explore. In exchange, we need your military minds, your tactical innovation, your unique perspective on combat." The implications were staggering. Humanity's first contact with alien life, and they were being recruited as soldiers. But Elena saw something in Nexus's shifting form. Was it desperation? "What kind of threat are we talking about?" Chen asked, his voice grave. Nexus's form darkened. "We call them the Swarm. They don't invade worlds. They consume them. Entire solar systems vanish into their collective mass. Conventional weapons are useless. Traditional tactics fail. We need unconventional solutions." Elena watched as Chen processed this information. Humanity had dreamed of reaching the stars, of joining a galactic community. But not like this. Not as warriors in someone else's war. "We'll need time to discuss this with Earth's governments," Chen said finally. "Time is not a luxury we have in abundance," Nexus replied. "But we understand. You have 48 hours to provide an initial response. Remember, rejection of our offer does not mean you will be spared when the swarm arrives. It only means you'll face them alone." As the consortium representatives departed, Alina turned to Chen. "They're afraid," she said quietly. Chen nodded. "Yes, and that's what worries me most. What kind of enemy terrifies beings who can bend the laws of physics?" Humanity was about to find out. The United Nations Security Council chamber had never felt so crowded. Representatives from every nation sat shoulder to shoulder, their usual political differences forgotten in the face of this unprecedented situation. Director Chen stood at the podium, his presentation on the consortium's offer drawing to a close. "In summary," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "we have 48 hours to decide whether humanity joins an interstellar war or faces extinction alone." Dr. Alina Martinez watched from her seat as the chamber erupted into controlled chaos. She'd spent the last 24 hours analyzing the data the consortium had provided about the swarm. The more she learned, the more she understood why these advanced civilizations were desperate enough to seek help from Earth. Admiral Sarah Wong of the Pacific Fleet stood up, her decorated uniform catching the light. "What exactly do they expect us to contribute? Our most advanced weapons would be primitive by their standards." "They don't want our weapons," Alina found herself saying, drawing all eyes to her. She stood, pulling up holographic data the consortium had shared. "They want our minds, our approach to warfare." The hologram showed footage of the swarm in action, a mass of darkness that moved like a living thing, consuming everything in its path. Conventional energy weapons passed through it harmlessly. Physical projectiles were absorbed. Even the consortium's most advanced ships couldn't stand against it. "The consortium has been fighting the swarm for centuries," Alina continued. "They've developed incredibly advanced technology, but they've become predictable. The swarm adapts to their tactics faster than they can develop new ones, and they think we can do better." The Chinese representative asked, skepticism clear in his voice. "We already have," Chen interjected. "They've been studying our military history, the way we adapt, improvise, think outside conventional boundaries. Our entire approach to warfare is alien to them." Alina brought up another hologram, this one showing Earth's military history. "Look at how we've evolved our tactics. From ancient armies to modern warfare, we constantly innovate. We don't just develop better weapons, we completely change how we fight. The consortium fights like a perfect machine," Chen added. "But the swarm isn't a machine. It's something else entirely. They need warriors who can think creatively, who can change strategies mid-battle, who can see solutions where they see only problems." Admiral Wong leaned forward. "And what exactly are they offering in return?" "Everything." Alina breathed, pulling up the final set of data. "Access to faster-than-light travel. Clean energy technology that could end our climate crisis. Medical advances that could eliminate disease. Knowledge that would advance our civilization by centuries. And if we refuse," the Russian representative's voice was grave. Chen's face darkened. "The swarm is coming, whether we help the consortium or not. They've already consumed 3 star systems in our sector of the galaxy. Earth would be defenseless against them." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had always imagined first contact would be a moment of wonder and discovery. Instead, they found themselves faced with an impossible choice: become soldiers in an alien war or face annihilation. "There's something else," Alina said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Something in the data they provided. The swarm, it's not just consuming systems, it's learning from them, evolving. Each world it takes makes it stronger, smarter." "How long?" Admiral Wong asked. How long until it reaches Earth? At its current rate of expansion, Elena pulled up the calculations. 5 years, maybe less. The chamber erupted again, but Chen raised his hand for silence. We don't have time for lengthy debates. The consortium needs our answer in 24 hours. But before we vote, consider this. They're not just offering us technology. They're offering us a seat at the galactic table, a chance to prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars. As the representatives began their deliberations, Elena found herself staring at the hologram of the swarm. Its writhing mass seemed to mock them, a predator confident in its inevitable victory. But there was something about its movement pattern, something that tickled at the edge of her analytical mind. Dr. Martinez. Chen's voice pulled her from her thoughts. You've been studying the swarm data. What's your assessment? Elena looked up at the assembled leaders of Earth, knowing her next words could help shape humanity's future. The swarm is terrifying, she admitted, but it's not invincible. It has patterns, behaviors we might exploit. The consortium sees it as an unstoppable force of nature. But we humans, we've been defying nature since we first discovered fire. Admiral Wong smiled grimly. And if there's one thing humans know how to do, it's fight against impossible odds. The vote, when it came, was surprisingly unified. Earth would join the consortium's war effort, not just because they had no choice, but because humanity had never been good at backing down from a challenge. As the representatives filed out to inform their governments, Chen approached Elena. The consortium returns in 12 hours, he said. They'll want to begin immediately. Are you ready? Elena thought about the patterns she'd seen in the swarm's movement, the possibilities already forming in her mind. Yes, she said. I think I am. But, Director, they may not be ready for us. The consortium's primary research facility hung in space like a crystalline snowflake, its vast arms stretching for kilometers in every direction. 3 months had passed since Earth joined the war effort, and humanity was already making its presence felt. Dr. Elena Martinez stood in the central laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing the swarm's attack patterns. Around her, a team of Earth's brightest minds worked alongside alien scientists, their different approaches to problem-solving creating an atmosphere of controlled chaos. You're certain about this? Nexus asked, its particle form swirling with what Elena had learned to recognize as concern. The energy requirements alone would be substantial. Elena finished, manipulating the hologram to highlight her findings. But look at the pattern here. The swarm doesn't just consume matter, it processes it in waves, like a digestive system. There's a rhythm to it. Admiral Wong, who had been appointed as Earth's military liaison, stepped forward. And you think we can use that rhythm against it? We've been thinking about this all wrong, Elena explained, expanding the display. The consortium's weapons are incredibly advanced, but they're designed to destroy. The swarm adapts to destruction. It's what it does. But what if we don't try to destroy it? What if we disrupt its feeding pattern instead? The laboratory fell silent as Elena laid out her theory. The swarm's consumption of matter wasn't just feeding. It was how it maintained its cohesion. Disrupt that pattern enough, and the entire mass might begin to break down. It's insane, one of the consortium scientists said, its crystalline form vibrating with agitation. The power requirements would drain our largest ships in seconds. Then we don't use your ships, Admiral Wong interjected, pulling up schematics that Earth's engineers had been developing. We build new ones, smaller, faster, more maneuverable, ships designed specifically for this strategy. The schematics showed vessels unlike anything the consortium had ever seen. Where their ships were elegant and sophisticated, these were stripped down to pure functionality. Each one carried a single massive pulse generator designed to emit energy at exactly the frequency Elena had identified in the swarm's feeding pattern. You want to give up our technological advantage? Nexus asked, its form darkening. These ships would be vulnerable. Yes, Elena said firmly. That's the point. The swarm adapts to strength, so we show it weakness. We make ourselves look like easy prey, then strike where it least expects. Admiral Wong smiled grimly. It's an old human tactic, the false retreat. Make your enemy think they're winning, then turn their own momentum against them. Over the next few weeks, the first prototype ships were constructed. The consortium's advanced manufacturing capabilities, combined with human ingenuity, produced vessels that would have been impossible on Earth. They were ugly, ungainly things compared to the consortium's sleek ships, but they had one crucial advantage. They were unexpected. Training began immediately. Human pilots, chosen for their ability to think creatively under pressure, learned to handle the new ships. The consortium's perfect, precise battle formations were replaced with fluid, unpredictable patterns that seemed chaotic but held a deeper purpose. Your species continues to surprise us, Nexus said to Elena one day, as they watched a training exercise. We expected warriors. Instead, you've given us revolutionaries. Elena nodded, watching as the human pilots executed maneuvers that made the consortium observers visibly uncomfortable. That's because you see war as a problem to be solved. We see it as a challenge to be overcome. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced or powerful one. It's the one your enemy never sees coming. But not everyone was convinced. Some members of the consortium worried that humanity's unconventional approaches might make the swarm even more dangerous. What if their attempts to disrupt its feeding patterns only taught it new ways to adapt? The debate was cut short by urgent news from the front lines. The swarm had changed course unexpectedly, consuming an inhabited system before the consortium's forces could respond. The death toll was catastrophic. It's accelerating, Elena realized, analyzing the new data. It's not just expanding anymore, it's hunting, as if it knows we're planning something. Admiral Wong's face hardened. Then we've run out of time for debates. Our ships are ready enough. We need to act now before it claims another system. Nexus's form pulsed with nervous energy. The prototype ships haven't completed their testing cycles. The risk is acceptable, Elena interrupted. Every moment we wait, the swarm grows stronger. We need to strike while our strategy still has the element of surprise. The command center erupted into activity as orders were transmitted across space. The prototype ships, designated Fireflies by their human crews, moved into position. They would have one chance to prove that humanity's unconventional approach could work against an enemy that had defeated the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. As Elena watched the fleet prepare for battle, she felt a strange mix of pride and terror. Humanity had spent just 3 months adapting alien technology and tactics to their needs, developing strategies that the consortium would never have considered. Now they would find out if thinking differently was enough to change the course of a war that had raged for centuries. Are you afraid? Nexus asked quietly. Elena thought about the swarm, about the lives at stake, about everything humanity had to prove. Yes, she admitted, but being afraid never stopped humans from doing what needs to be done. The battle began in silence. Space swallowed the sounds of combat, but the visual display in the command center made up for it with brutal clarity. The swarm moved like a living shadow across the stars, its mass distorting light itself as it approached the waiting fleet. All ships maintain position. Admiral Wong's voice was steady over the comm channel. Remember your training. Don't engage until you see the signal. Elena stood beside Nexus in the command center, her fingers dancing over holographic displays as she monitored the swarm's feeding patterns. The creature's massive form rippled with dark energy, already beginning its consumption sequence. It's bigger than our projections, she muttered, adjusting her calculations. The last system it consumed. It's grown exponentially. We should withdraw, one of the consortium commanders urged. Recalculate, plan a new strategy. No, Elena interrupted, her eyes fixed on the data streams. Look at the pattern. It's exactly what we predicted, just on a larger scale. The plan will work. The swarm moved closer, its vast darkness swallowing stars as it advanced. The fleet of Firefly ships hung motionless in space, appearing vulnerable and isolated. Perfect bait. Energy spike. A sensor operator called out. It's beginning its feeding sequence. Now, Admiral Wong commanded. All ships, execute pattern Delta. The Firefly ships burst into action. Instead of retreating or attacking directly, they scattered in what appeared to be complete chaos. The swarm's mass surged forward, tendrils of darkness reaching out to ensnare what it perceived as easy prey. Second wave, engage, Wong ordered. More ships emerged from hiding behind nearby asteroids, their pulse generators charging. The swarm's mass shifted, trying to adapt to the new threat, but the human pilots were already changing formation again, moving in patterns that defied prediction. Energy readings are fluctuating, Elena reported, watching as the pulse generators disrupted the swarm's feeding rhythm. It's working, but something's wrong. The disruption isn't spreading fast enough. The swarm seemed to pause, its massive form rippling with what might have been confusion. Then it changed tactics. Instead of trying to consume the ship's whole, it began breaking apart into smaller segments, each one targeting individual vessels. It's adapting. Nexus's form pulsed with alarm. This is what we feared. We've taught it a new way to hunt. But Admiral Wong was already speaking. All ships, execute maneuver Omega. This is what we planned for. The Firefly ships regrouped with impossible precision, forming what appeared to be a standard consortium battle formation. The swarm's segments moved to counter this familiar pattern, exactly as planned. Now, Elena shouted, seeing the pattern align perfectly. Hit it with everything. Every ship in the fleet fired their pulse generators simultaneously. The energy waves collided in a carefully calculated interference pattern, creating a cascading disruption that tore through the swarm's feeding rhythm. The smaller segments tried to rejoin, but the disruption prevented them from reforming properly. Look at the readings, Elena breathed, watching as the swarm's mass began to destabilize. It can't maintain cohesion. The smaller pieces can't process energy fast enough on their own. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The swarm, for the first time in its existence, found itself fighting an enemy that didn't behave according to any pattern it could adapt to. Every time it changed tactics, the human pilots shifted their approach, never giving it time to adjust. But victory came at a terrible cost. The Firefly ships, operating at the edge of their capabilities, began to fail. One by one, their pulse generators burned out, leaving them vulnerable. The swarm, even in its weakened state, showed no mercy. "We're losing too many ships." Wong's voice was tight with strain. "We need to end this now." Elena's fingers flew over the displays, analyzing the swarm's deteriorating patterns. There, she pointed to a spot where the disruption was strongest. "If we concentrate everything we have left on that point, it will burn out every remaining ship," Nexus warned. "Then that's what we'll do," Wong declared. "All remaining ships, form up on my position. Divert all power to pulse generators." The surviving Firefly ships gathered for one final assault. Their generators screamed with power far beyond their design limits. The swarm, sensing the threat, tried to retreat, but its broken segments couldn't move fast enough. The combined pulse hit the swarm like a hammer strike on crystal. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash that lit up half the system, the swarm's remaining mass shattered. Its fragments, unable to maintain their complex energy patterns, dissolved into inert matter. In the command center, silence fell. The holographic displays showed only debris where the swarm had been, and the scattered remains of too many human ships. "Status report," Wong demanded, her voice hoarse. "The swarm's energy patterns have completely collapsed," Elena reported, her hands shaking as she checked the readings. "No signs of regeneration. We did it." "At what cost?" Nexus asked quietly. The final numbers were sobering. Over 60% of the Firefly fleet had been lost in the battle. Hundreds of brave pilots had sacrificed themselves to prove that humanity's unconventional tactics could defeat an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. As recovery ships moved in to rescue survivors, Alina felt Nexus move beside her. The alien's particle form had taken on a deep, respectful blue. "We thought we needed warriors," it said softly. "Instead, you showed us something far more valuable, the power of thinking differently, of being willing to sacrifice everything to protect others." Alina watched as the survivors were brought aboard, their faces showing a mix of grief and pride. "That's what humans do," she said. "We adapt, we overcome, and we never stop fighting for what matters." 1 year after the battle that destroyed the swarm, the consortium's Grand Assembly chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from every spacefaring race had gathered to witness something unprecedented: the formal admission of humanity into the consortium's ruling council. Dr. Elena Martinez stood beside Admiral Wong and Director Chen, still somewhat uncomfortable in her formal diplomatic attire. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien architecture, its crystalline walls shifting with colors that reflected the emotions of those within. Today, they pulsed with a mix of anticipation and unease. "They're still afraid of us," Admiral Wong murmured, watching the alien delegates. "Just for different reasons now." She wasn't wrong. The destruction of the swarm had changed everything. Humanity had proven themselves not just capable warriors, but innovative problem solvers who could overcome challenges that had stymied the galaxy's most advanced civilizations for centuries. Nexus floated to the center of the chamber, its particle form gleaming with formal dignity. "We gather today to acknowledge a truth that can no longer be denied." Its harmonious voice filled the space. Humanity has earned its place among the stars, not through technological advancement or cultural refinement, but through something far more valuable: the ability to see possibilities where others see only obstacles. The chamber walls flickered with waves of blue and gold as Nexus continued. "When we first approached Earth, we sought warriors. What we found instead were teachers. Humanity has shown us that true strength lies not in superior technology or perfect tactics, but in the willingness to adapt, to sacrifice, and to think beyond conventional boundaries." Elena felt a sudden wave of emotion as images appeared in the air around them, recordings from the battle against the swarm. The Firefly ships dancing through space, their seemingly chaotic movements masking a deeper strategy. The final devastating pulse that had shattered an enemy believed to be invincible. "But this victory has also taught us something about ourselves," Nexus said, its form darkening slightly. "We, the consortium, had become complacent in our advancement. We had forgotten that progress comes not from perfection, but from the willingness to embrace new ideas, even when they challenge our most basic assumptions." Director Chen stepped forward as planned, his voice steady. "Humanity accepts its place on the council with humility and determination. We know that our victory over the swarm came at a terrible cost. We lost many brave souls in that battle, both human and consortium. Their sacrifice reminds us that the greatest challenges can only be overcome when we work together, combining our different strengths and perspectives." The chamber walls rippled with deep purple respect, Alina had learned. But there was also an undertone of red concern, perhaps even fear. The other races had seen what humanity could accomplish in just a few months of access to advanced technology. What might they achieve in years? Decades? Admiral Wong had anticipated this reaction. She raised her hand, and new images appeared, not of battle this time, but of cooperation. Human engineers working alongside alien scientists to develop new technologies. The Firefly ship's pulse generator technology being adapted for peaceful purposes, revolutionizing energy production across the galaxy. "We understand your concerns," Wong said, her voice carrying the weight of command. "Humanity's history is marked by conflict, but also by growth and learning. We don't seek to dominate, but to contribute, to help build a galaxy where innovation and cooperation trump fear and stagnation." Elena stepped forward then, adding her own perspective. The swarm taught us all an important lesson. No single approach, no matter how advanced, can address every challenge. It's our differences, in thinking, in approach, in perspective, that make us stronger together than we could ever be apart. The chamber wall swirled with a complex mix of colors as the assembled delegates processed these words. Then, one by one, they began to signal their acceptance. The formal ceremony that followed was brief by consortium standards, another concession to human influence. As the assembly dispersed, Alina found herself standing with Nexus in one of the chamber's quiet alcoves. The alien's form had taken on the deep blue of contemplation. "You know," Alina said, watching the departing delegates, "when you first contacted us, we thought we were being recruited as soldiers in someone else's war. We never imagined we'd end up changing the way the entire galaxy thinks about problem-solving." Nexus's form shimmered with what might have been amusement. "And we never imagined that the solutions we sought would come not from superior firepower or advanced technology, but from the simple human ability to think differently. Perhaps that is why your species unsettles so many. You remind us that there is always another way, always another possibility we haven't considered." Alina smiled, remembering those intense days of preparation before the battle, when human creativity had clashed with and ultimately complemented consortium precision. "We may be reluctant warriors," she said, "but we'll never stop pushing boundaries, asking questions, finding new ways to overcome challenges. It's who we are." "Indeed," Nexus agreed. "And perhaps that is exactly what this galaxy needs. Not just warriors or scientists or diplomats, but beings who can be all of these things and more. Beings who never stop evolving." As they looked out at the stars through the chamber's transparent walls, Alina felt a profound sense of possibility. Humanity had been thrust into an interstellar war, but they had emerged as something more than warriors. They had become innovators, teachers, bridge builders between different ways of thinking. The reluctant warriors had found their true purpose, not in fighting, but in showing the galaxy that there was always another way forward, always another possibility to explore, as long as you were willing to think differently, to adapt, to evolve.